All right, you guys, it's episode 87 of Inner Demons, and without further ado, I'm gonna get straight to it. So check it out, you guys. Before I get into this episode, I just want to say something real quick with respects to the McCaffrey interview. First and foremost, I apologize for the audio. I know it's terrible. The first two episodes, you can hear me breathing. I was talking in the background. I didn't think that it would pick it up. I thought I had it on mute, but obviously I didn't. You know, you guys went in on me in the comments, and that's cool. I understand that. Just know that the forthcoming episodes are better. I fixed the problem. You know, in one of the episodes, he's out on the yard. They got tablets now. They're able to take the tablets out to the yard and make phone calls out there. And he's picking up a lot of wind interference. There's nothing I can do about that. It is what it is. You know, the one that I just recorded tonight, probably like half the interview, an alarm went off. Somebody was getting off in the building and the alarm went off, but he still keeps talking. It's kind of hard to hear. I'm still going to play it because it's, you know, it's part of his story, but I'm just giving you guys a heads up. Anyways, the last thing I want to say is I appreciate all the support, everybody that has been supporting this channel in the comments. Man, you guys are doing your thing. I appreciate you guys. I'm glad that a lot of you are smarter than, I'm just glad you guys are smarter than that. You guys see things for what they are. And that's all I'm going to say on that. Anyways, episode 86. So I told you guys I went back to the observation cell. And again, this is like the third time I hit this observation cell this is probably around the 6th year I've been in this county jail. That's a lot of SOS. Anyway, I'm in that observation cell probably for about a good solid 2 months. While I'm up there in the observation cell, classification would occasionally come up as they're doing their walks. I told you guys how they would walk the old jail. They would walk all the max tiers. And, you know, when they would come by my cell, a lot of the times they would stop. And one in particular would show me letters. And I knew that this was to encourage me, you know, to let that go, let that lifestyle go. I was still hanging on. Even though that incident transpired in 2nd East with the channel changer, whatever you want to call it, the spearing, whatever. So it was at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm not talking to nobody. I don't want to talk to them people. They were constantly reaching out to classification, asking them if I wanted to talk to them, if I was ready to talk to them. And I kept telling them, I'm not going to talk to them. I'm good. You know, I got nothing to say to them. This was a game I knew that they were playing all along from Jump Street. It was obvious. So, you know, I continued to just stay in the observation cell. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was conflicted. You guys got to keep in mind that my wife passed away like right before that incident happened. So I was still kind of dealing with that, you know, with that whole just dealing with the grief, dealing with, you know, the reality that she was gone. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I didn't want to talk to them. So, you know, like I said, occasionally when classification would walk by, there was one in particular that would always show me letters. These guys were writing letters to each other and they didn't have no codes. They didn't have no codes. They were trying to talk between the lines. But if you don't have a code and you're trying to talk to somebody else, and they understand you, then the people that are monitoring the mail can understand you. So they were just blatantly putting it out there. You know, they were putting all their business out there, and, you know, a couple of letters had my name in them, you know, straight up. Boxer, you know, he had an apartment. He's no longer on the lease. You know, we kicked him out or something along those lines. Basically was saying that I was in bad standings. I knew that they were trying to bridge that gap. They were trying to get me to talk to these people, but it wasn't working. Even, you know, there was, I want to say it was probably like 4 or 5 letters. And these letters were from Chuco. They were from Chuco. One of them was from Chuco to Lencho. I want to say a couple of the other letters were to Dancing Bear. And then they were to somebody else. I want to say Paul Lopez Smiley. So, you know, even though I already knew what time it was, just seeing it on paper, you know, it just left a sick feeling in my stomach. Those of you that have been in that situation, those of you that were active, fell into bad standings, you know, when you see it on paper, you see your name on a BNL, in a letter, something like that, in some kind of communication, it makes you sick, unless you're just somebody that just didn't care about, you know, your career or that lifestyle that you were, you know, you were living, that commitment that you made. So I was sick, you know. I would read the letter and I would just shake my head and I'd be like, yeah, you know, I hear you, man. But anyway, so I stayed there probably for about a good 2 months. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of letting time go by, waiting to see what was going to happen. So I told you guys how that paperwork wasn't all the way redacted. There was a couple of names or a couple of spots where they didn't all, you know, blacken out the name all the way. So you were able to see what the name was. I caught it as soon as I started to read the report, and it was obvious that it was Lefty. Lefty was making a statement. Now, Lefty was still in the snake pits when this paperwork came out. And we knew that. We knew where everybody was at in the jail. It gets around. It's just, you have a way of finding these things out. So Lefty was in the snake pits, and, you know, they're supposed to redact all those reports. They're supposed to go through them with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that the people that are talking are not exposed. And if they're exposed, then something might end up happening to him. It puts him in danger. That's what ended up happening to Lefty. After we got the reports, everybody pretty much got them around the same time. When discovery comes out and you're, you know, you're fighting a case like this, an indictment, and there's 15, 20 people that are all part of that indictment. When the DA, when he processes, you know, the discovery, he does it for everybody at the same time. All 20 of the attorneys get it. Sometimes, you know, the attorneys, some attorneys are behind. It's sent to them, but they just don't put it out. Others are on top of it. Well, my attorney was one that was on top of stuff. When stuff came out, reports, things like that, he was on it. He was on the ball. So I want to say it was like a day or two after I got that report, Lefty ended up getting hit in the snake pits. And Lefty ain't a small dude. Lefty's a good sized individual. So he was in the snake pits, and I want to say right there by the snake pits in 2nd West, there's a shower right across from the snake pits that the snake pits use. Well, supposedly they ended up getting Lefty in the shower. They sent 2 torpedoes at him. One of them had a razor, sliced him, gave him a, you know, they hit him in the face, and I want to say they hit him in the arm or something, but Lefty fought back. But anyways, that was the end of Lefty's career. So he ended up getting PC'd up. Not long after that, his brother, Gato, I want to say his name is David Lastra, he was on the 4th floor. He heard about his brother. He dropped out. So, you know, there was a lot of individuals that started dropping out around the same time. At this time, other indictments were happening. So you had my indictment, and then you had the Dancing Bear indictment. And Kramer was on that. Jaime Kramer, Stick 'em Up from San Jose, was on that. All the guys that were in Second East, they were on that indictment. And then they hit Sammy Wino, Sammy Ramirez. They took him and his whole crew down. That was another like 20, 25 individuals. They all came in. They all got indicted. Then they hit Charlie Campa. That was another 20 to 25 individuals that ended up getting indicted. This was, I want to say Charlie had like the Hollister area, South Bay out there. Wino had San Jose, Milpitas, that area right there. So now you got all these indictments that are happening around the same time. You got 4 of them. And in each one of those indictments, you had your cooperators off the rip. There was like 3 or 4 people in each one that cooperated as soon as they dropped the hammer. So all these guys were starting to hit the tiers. All of them were starting to hit the tiers. And it was, you know, I never got any kind of, you know, it didn't do nothing for me when I seen somebody else come walking in on the tier when their career was over. But it was funny to see that a lot of these same guys that were coming in, we had all the phone calls. And, you know, this is exactly what I've told you guys before. When you're not the one getting indicted and you're not the one that's in that position, your life isn't the one that's hanging in the balance, or your life isn't hanging in the balance, it's easy to critique other people and say, yeah, that dude's a piece of shit. I can't believe he went out ass backwards like that. And it's easy to say that when it's not you. But, when the rabbits got the gun, it's a different story. A lot of these guys, I listened to their phone calls and they were talking that talk, but now, they came walking in and it was over. A light bulb went off. They understood. It's not fun when you're looking at 20 or 30 years, especially when you've been out there for a while on the streets and you've been accustomed to living that type of lifestyle. Now that, your freedom, you got a wife, you got kids, you got nice toys out there, cars, a house, you got a dog like Gizmo. You know what I mean? It's hard to go back in and leave all that stuff behind. I think it's harder for, guys that go in and out of prison, opposed to those that end up getting washed up. They get hit with that one case and they go in for 15, 20 years. Because every time you go back, you're losing everything that you got out there. Every time you go back, everything that you've invested in out there you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it. So, all these different guys were coming in. All these different guys were coming in, and it was crazy just seeing a lot of them hit the tiers. So anyways, at one point, they ended up moving me back to Lil Max. Classification came walking by one day and they were like, hey, man, we need the cell. We need the cell. We're going to put you back in Lil Max. That we got a JCAT or something that we got to put in this cell. This dude's causing a ruckus somewhere in the jail. And I still wasn't sold on the idea that, I did everything that I did to get off that, Lil Max. I spared two individuals back there to get off that tier. And I just wasn't crazy about, the idea of going back again, even though I knew that it was officially over this time. I didn't want to go back there. I just wanted to stay in that observation cell and just kind of bide time. Again, I don't know what I was doing. I was just on idle right there at that point, just kind of letting time go by. Anyways, I couldn't do nothing. I couldn't refuse the move. Classification told me, look, man, this is not, we don't have a choice in this matter. We need this cell. This dude, we have to put him in an observation cell. We tried to find, other cells. We tried to make some moves around to try to, keep you here, but we got to move you. There's only your boy, Patrick Martinez Turtle. He's one of the only ones back there. I believe there was one other guy back there, and he was like just a nobody. He said, but, your boy Turtle's back there. And, even though it was official for Turtle, I still wasn't crazy about going back there. But at the end of the day, I had to. So I packed it up, and later on that day, they ended up moving me back to Lil Max. And again, even though I'm conflicted, I knew it was over. I knew it was over. I knew that everything had ran its course. Everything that had happened since the time Dancing Bear helped me get out of that situation, a lot of people were involved. So I knew that a lot of people were on board with everything that was happening. And the letters proved it. If nothing else, they did prove it. I seen it with my own eyes. So they escort me over there, and I get to Lil Max and I see Turtle. This is the first time I've seen him since the day he walked off the tier in Second East in the middle of the night. I don't know if you guys remember that, but it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. They came on the tier because I think they knew that the reports were getting ready to come out. But, they came on the tier. I remember him calling down to me, AB, he's like, I'm moving, bro. And I knew it was up because I knew about the paperwork. Nobody else did, but I knew about it. So I played along with the game. Where you going, bro? He's like, man, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe to the 4th floor. And I was like, yeah, bro. Hey, well, when you get up there, make sure you get back at us, bro. Let us know wherever you land. And he was like, yeah. He's like, all right, B, man. He's like, one love, homie. He's like, all right, bro, I'll get at you. I'm sure I'll be seeing you again. So they take him off the tier that day, and that was the last time I seen him. So, when I hit Lil Max again, I go into my cell cleaning mode. I go back to the same cell, best TV shot in the house, right in front of the TV. Little Max, there was just 4 cells. 4 cells. Matter of fact, Truco, that's where they housed Truco when he was there. I know he was there for a couple years. He was there with China. I talked about China in a couple of other episodes. He was the Asian brother that basically played Las Vegas. He was a good dude. And he was back from death row on the case that he was fighting. Anyway, so Little Max was 4 cells. I want to say the last cell, there's actually 5 cells, but the last cell, there's a dip bar back there, and then you have a shower. So everything's kind of self-contained. It's a little small tier. I'd rather be on a tier like that than South Max or North Max, because over there, there's like 12 to 16 cells. I can't remember, but it's smaller, it's quieter, and it's a better tier. So, I get back there, I clean the cell, and me and Turtle, we catch up. We catch up on everything that's happened, the case, everybody that's involved, the things that are happening with other people dropping out. And this is the first time that he tells me, and I believe I told you guys this in one of the other episodes. This is the first time he tells me, he's like, "AB, you know what, bro? I want to thank you, homie." He's like, the last time you were in the observation cell, and CO Johnson, I sent him over there to tell you I send my regards. When he came back and he told me what you said, he's like, "Bro, I appreciate it." When he delivered that message, I felt like 1,000 pounds was lifted off my shoulders. To hear you say that you still had love for me, bro, and that you understood the situation I was in, he was like, that's all it took. From that point on, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do my thing, get back out there to my family. And that helped me get through it, bro. And I appreciate you for that. And it was all good. I understood, like I said. Anyways, even though that time, at that time when he sent that message over there and I was active, I was still active. I was in double red at that time. You guys got to remember, when I was in the observation cell at that time, it was for fighting with, that's when I rushed that sergeant. And I would go back to Second East after that. But I was still active at that time. But even though I was active, that's how I felt. I understood. He had a family out there, and I wasn't tripping. A lot of people had told on me at that point. You had Twist, you had the statements that Pony made, Roger Carranza, and then there was a bunch of other small cases that started happening. Around this same time too, I ended up getting a police report out of nowhere, and it was basically, it was William Fernandez. He's somebody that was working with me out there on the streets. And when I got into that shootout on Impala, he was the one that picked up most of the guns. He gave Pony some of the guns, and he gave Pony all the dope and the money. And then he took some of the guns and he kept them at his house. Well, he ended up disappearing with the guns. I was running around trying to catch him out there on the streets when I was still out there. I went to his one of his pads out there. I couldn't catch up with them. So Willow was worried about, his status at that time. But what ended up happening was Willow had a kite for me that he wanted somebody to take into the county jail. I want to say it was Thavo Lua from Brotherhood. He had a kite that he wanted Thavo to bring into the county jail when he turned himself in, and he wanted him to shoot that kite to me. This is when I was still active. And it was a breakdown of everything. The situation that happened on Impala, the guns, what happened to him, where the guns were at, all that good stuff. Well, when Thavo got caught up, they went to his house, they raided his house, and that kite was in his safe. Well, because it had my name on it, it blew their case up. It blew their case up, but it also made my case a lot more messier. So I got a bunch of other reports that detailed that case, how they went over there, they searched, how they found that kite, how Willow was obviously scared, because of the situation dealing with the shootout and him having guns. They knew everything. They knew everything. So, it was interesting around this same time when all these other indictments started happening. It was like bam, 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 one after the other. Lencho's indictment was predicated on all the things that he was doing when he was on Second East, when he was in Second East. If Lencho would have just came into the jail, kept his mouth shut, fought his case, because he came in there, originally he came in there on just a case where it was just a dope case and some other shit. I think he had 3 felonies, but it wasn't that bad. If he would have came in there, he would have took heed to what happened with all of us, he would have been okay. But he hit Second East and that fool went plumb loco. Straight up, he got on the phone, or he had Mono Saluni get on the phone, and he had them make 1,000 phone calls to try to reach everybody in San Jose, every dope dealer out there that was selling dope for him. And then he had his lady running around, tapping in with everybody. So he was trying to orchestrate everything from Second East, and that's what got him indicted. And I told you guys that, I knew Lencho was going to be in a lot of trouble. I knew he was, because when we started getting the police reports, it detailed how Lencho was forcing the other carnals out there, Sammy, Charlie, Kramer. It detailed how Lencho would go to these meetings with these guys, and he'd have his girl, Debbie, sitting on his lap, while they were conducting these meetings, while they were talking about NF business. Abundis was there. He was another NF member that was out there. But, these guys would approach Lencho and they would tell him, hey, your girl, she's got no place here, bro. This is NF business. And Lencho would still tell them, you know what, this is my other half. She's going to be here. I trust her with my life. That's just the way it is. I don't know who Lencho thought he was, but he was a cat too, and he was above Charlie, Sammy, and the other, NF members out there at that time that were running their regiments, but they could have stood up to him. They could have stood up to him and they could have told him, you know what, now we're going to shut this down, bro. If you don't want to dismiss her, then we're out of here. But I don't want to say that they were intimidated by him. That's giving him way too much credit, because if you guys see him, look at him. He's greasy. I think it was more just the fact that Lencho had been around for a while. He'd been around for a while, since the 80s. That's just that in itself, I think, is what, made a lot of these other brothers kind of just step back and accept what he was doing. But anyways, when I started reading the reports and I started seeing how, he would send her over there to meet like Carlos Roman, then send her over there to meet this guy, pick up some dope and that guy. And, she was meeting all these different people out there. And then in the end, when she cooperated, they went to her house. They basically packed up her whole house and moved her somewhere to witness protection. But before she did, she went out there and she hit every last member and associate that was associated with Lencho's regiment. Anybody that functioned under him or was associated with this regiment, she was going over there wired up, and she was getting them all caught up. And again, it was all because they were forced to trust Debbie based off of Lencho. So I knew he was going to be in trouble. And sure enough, that was one of the reasons why he ended up getting caught up. We're back there. We're still doing our thing. Even though we were in the situation we were in, we had accepted our status. I had accepted it. He accepted his. We knew we were done. But it didn't mean we were just going to lay around all day. A lot of the things that I learned, a lot of the things that I used to do when I was active, I continued to program like that. 7 o'clock, I would bust down, Machina. My cell would be cleaned. Everything would be organized. I'd have everything just put away. My mattress would be rolled up. I was still programming like I was when I was active, even though I wasn't. A lot of dudes, when they drop out, a lot of them, they completely lose all that. And they start acting like J-Cats. A lot of them, I seen in Carson section and San Quentin, that whole first tier would be protective custody or special program. Whatever, guys that had dropped out or were no longer good or were targets, but they would be down there all day, just hating, talking shit, mad at the guys above them that were still active. When we'd be up there doing group machina, they'd be down there just hating, talking shit, singling out certain individuals, yelling off their gates. They were bitter. I never got that. When cats fall into bad standings or when they decide to walk away from that lifestyle, a lot of the times they're bitter. And they take it out on the guys that are still functioning, they're still doing their thing, they're still, pushing. And it's not their fault, but a lot of the negative energy would be directed at them. I used to sit up there and just listen to them. A lot of the guys that were, you had some guys that had been in protective custody for a while, like the main ones at that time. You had also Gerald Winston from Santa Rosa. He wasn't one to really talk a lot of shit. You had Daryl Cost, Weddle D from Hayward. You had Mousy from Oakland. These were guys that were like regulars. They used to come in all the time. But, some of them would just be down there just talking shit. Anyway, so this time that I'm back there in Lil Max, there's really nothing happening. Nothing's happening at that point. I'm still just kind of just waiting for something to happen. I knew sooner or later something was going to have to happen. Either I was going to have to make a choice or, I was going to end up going to court and the court process was going to get pushed along and something was going to happen. I wasn't in a hurry to make it happen from my end. I kind of just sat back and waited. And it wasn't like they were trying to push these cases through the courts. They were pushing them through real slow. A lot of the times we wouldn't even make it to court. They would just set the court date off another 3-4 months and we would find out through our attorneys. So for the most part, I just kind of, passed time up there with Turtle. His situation was similar. He knew that he was going to end up getting some time. And the longer he stayed there, the more credit that he got. So he wasn't in a hurry to get out of there either. I want to say we stayed back there probably around 2 years. We would end up staying back there for around 2 years. So anyways, as far as my family at that point, my mom, she was still around. My stepfather was still around. My grandmother was still around. That was the only family that I had left. Again, it was still kind of fresh, everything that happened with Vicky. So a lot of the conversations I had with my family, they were, a lot of them were about her and how her mom was doing and how her family was doing. At that point right there, my grandmother started ailing. She was already blind. She was going deaf. And I knew that her time was coming, that I was going to end up getting one of those visits from the chaplain, or they were going to end up pulling me out or something, and it was going to be about my grandmother. And then at some point, she ended up in the hospital. She ended up in the hospital, and she was ailing bad. Like I said, she couldn't see. She was sick. I forget what she had, but there were all kind of things going on with her at that time. My mom seemed to have thought at that time that she wasn't going to make it out of the hospital. That was it. She was probably going to end up passing while she was there. That's how bad of shape she was in. So, at every opportunity I got, I called her. And, I would talk to her, and it seemed like she would perk up when I would call, because I was close with my grandmother. My grandmother, we had the kind of family where there was only a few of us that really were there for each other. I didn't know none of my aunts and uncles from my mom's side of the family. The only ones from that side of her family that I knew was my grandmother. As far as, my stepfather, he had some family, and there was some interaction with them, but it wasn't like that. So literally the only family I had was my mom, my stepfather, and my grandmother. That was it. That was it. I had a couple of aunts from my dad's, from my biological dad, and I would tap in with them occasionally, but we just weren't as close as my mom, my grandmother, my stepfather. So that was the only family I had. To lose my grandmother, it was going to be a big thing. She was always there for me. I had a lot of memories, good memories from her from when I was a kid. And, seeing her go through what she was going through and knowing that it was a matter of time before she was going to pass, it was almost too big to accept. This is somebody that's been a staple in my life forever. But I guess it wasn't her time. She stayed there in the hospital for a couple of months. She's a trooper. And she would my mom would end up taking her back home. So, I knew it was coming though. I knew it was coming. But every chance I got, I would call home. Maybe once a week, sometimes every 2 weeks. At that time, phone calls were like $7, $8 a pop. It was crazy. So I didn't want to put that burden on my family. Now, these guys, they don't have to pay for the phone calls. They got tablets. They got all kind of, doing time is still fucked up. Nobody wants to be locked up. But the things that they got out there now, we didn't have those things. Anyways, this is probably a good spot to stop this one because the next episode, something else happens. So that's kind of how I'm doing these episodes. I'm going to continue to be putting out these inner demons. I know it's been a couple of days since I put one out. I had to tend to some other things. We still got a lot more phone calls that we're doing with Warrior. He's going to go through his entire history. He's got some good stories. So hopefully you guys are enjoying his stories. Hopefully he's touching people out there. Hopefully there's some youngsters out there that are hearing his story and, are a little less glorified, or that don't feel like that lifestyle is something to glorify after they hear his story. His story is reality. And I want to just say one last thing about the McCaffrey interview. The Mexican Mafia did have a lot to do with this story. You guys will understand that as he goes along. As he goes deeper into his story, you guys are going to find out that he was working under different MA members out there. He was out there in the mix, on the streets, in the county jail. He was doing a lot of different things out there. And he was plugged in directly with the Mexican Mafia. And as a result, these hits happened because they put a green light on them. But to be fair to the Mexican Mafia, I'm not insinuating that they had anything to do with what happened at that cemetery as far as killing women and, doing it in front of kids. I know for a fact the Mexican Mafia doesn't operate like that. The Mexican Mafia don't like to kill kids. They don't usually go after people's families. These two guys took that upon themselves. They allowed their alcohol to get the best of them. And because I know for a fact that they wouldn't have allowed that. That's not how they operate. Anyways, I'll get out another episode in the next day or two, maybe tomorrow. I'm also going to be say it one more time. Anyways, I'll get out another episode in another day or two. I'm also going to put out some more Mexican Mafia stories. I'm working on them right now. Hopefully I'll get one out tomorrow. I have a lot more for you guys. We're going to keep putting them out. We're going to keep putting out good content. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Inner Demons, episode 87. We still got a lot more. I'll try to get out another episode in the next day or two. We have a lot more Mexican Mafia stories. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Inner Demons, this episode 87. We have a lot more to go. We'll also be putting out a lot more Mexican Mafia stories, so you guys stay tuned for that. Once again, I want to thank everybody that's supporting the channel. I see you guys in the comments. You guys are doing your thing, man. Seriously, the amount of support and the things that you guys, are putting out there, it's appreciated. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here till the next one. This your boy B, and I'm out.